The way you show love today was written in your childhood. The touches you crave, the words you need to hear, the gestures that make you feel truly seen, they all trace back to those earliest moments when you first learned what love looks like. Most people know about love languages, but what they don't realize is that your primary love language isn't random. It's a psychological blueprint created in the first few years of life, shaped by how love was given to you, withheld from you, or distorted around you. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden psychology behind love languages. We'll explore how your childhood experiences didn't just influence your preferences, they literally rewired your brain to recognize, give, and accept love in specific ways. Research from Harvard's Center on the Developing Child shows that our earliest relationships create neural pathways that determine how we process emotional connection throughout our lives. These pathways become so deeply embedded that they feel like personality traits when they're actually learned responses. Dr. John Bowlby's attachment theory reveals that children develop internal working models of relationships based on their caregiver interactions. These models become the template for all future relationships. But here's what most people miss. They also determine which expressions of love feel authentic and which feel foreign, or even threatening. When a child consistently receives love through physical affection, their brain develops strong, neural pathways associating touch with safety and care. When love comes through encouraging words, different pathways strengthen. The brain literally sculpts itself around these early love experiences. The five love languages, through a childhood lens of words of affirmation, is your primary love language. Your childhood likely involved caregivers who used verbal encouragement as their main tool for connection. These were the parents who said, "I'm proud of you. You're so smart. I love watching you try new things." But this love language can also develop as compensation. Children who received harsh criticism or constant correction sometimes develop an intense need for affirming words as adults. Their brain learned to scan for verbal approval because its absence felt like emotional danger. The shadow side appears when these individuals struggle to feel loved without constant verbal reassurance. They may interpret neutral comments as criticism because their childhood brain learned that words carry the weight of love or rejection. Physical touch as a primary love language often traces back to caregivers who used touch for comfort, connection, and communication. These children were hugged during tears, held during stories, and touched gently during daily interactions. However, this love language can also emerge from touch deprivation. Children who received minimal physical affection sometimes develop an intense adult craving for touch. Their nervous system learned to associate physical contact with rare moments of connection and safety. Conversely, children who experienced inappropriate touch or physical punishment may struggle with physical affection as adults, even when they intellectually desire it. Their body holds memories that create conflicting signals about touch and safety. Quality time love language typically develops in children whose caregivers were emotionally present and engaged. These parents put down phones, made eye contact, and created special moments of focused attention. But it can also intensify in children who competed for attention with siblings, work, or other distractions. If your parents were physically present but emotionally absent, you may have developed a heightened need for undivided attention as proof of love. Adults with this love language often struggle with partial attention. They can sense when someone is physically present but mentally elsewhere because their childhood brain learned to detect the subtle difference between presence and availability, acts of service as a primary love. Language often comes from childhoods where love was demonstrated through actions rather than words or touch. These were the parents who showed care by packing lunches, helping with homework, or solving problems. Sometimes this develops when children had to mature quickly and take on responsibilities. If you had to care for yourself or others early in life, you may deeply value when someone else takes care of practical needs as an adult. The potential downside is difficulty recognizing love that doesn't come through actions. These individuals might miss emotional expressions of love because their brain is wired to look for behavioral evidence of care. Gift giving. Love language can develop from childhoods where thoughtful presents were genuine, expressions of love and attention. These weren't expensive gifts, but meaningful ones that showed the child was seen and remembered. This love language can also emerge from emotional neglect. Children who felt forgotten or overlooked sometimes develop a strong association between receiving gifts and feeling valued. The physical object becomes proof that someone thought of them. Adults with this love language often struggle when others dismiss gift giving as materialistic. For them, gifts carry deep emotional significance because they represent being held in someone's thoughts and heart. Your attachment style and love language are deeply interconnected. Securely attached children typically develop balanced love language preferences and can give and receive love in multiple ways. They had caregivers who were consistently responsive, creating flexible neural pathways for connection. Anxiously attached individuals often gravitate toward love languages that provide immediate reassurance, words of affirmation, or physical touch. Their childhood uncertainty about caregiver availability created a need for constant confirmation of love. Avoidantly attached people might prefer acts of service or gifts, expressions of love that don't require emotional vulnerability. Their childhood experience of emotional unavailability taught them to value practical demonstrations over emotional ones. Those with disorganized attachment may struggle with conflicting love language, needs, or difficulty trusting any expression of love, reflecting their early experience of caregivers who were both sources of comfort and fear. Childhood trauma significantly impacts love language development. Children who experienced emotional neglect often develop intense needs for their missing love language. A child who never heard encouraging words may become an adult who craves affirmation above all else. Conversely, trauma can create aversion to certain love expressions. A child who was love-bombed with gifts before abuse might struggle to trust gift-giving as adults. Their brain learned to associate that love language with manipulation. Complex trauma can create conflicting love language needs. Someone might desperately want physical affection while simultaneously feeling uncomfortable with touch. Their body craves what their mind fears, creating internal conflict in relationships. Love languages also carry cultural and generational imprints. Families from cultures that emphasize verbal expression often raise children who value words of affirmation. Cultures that show love through food preparation and care create adults who recognize love through acts of service. Generational trauma can create specific love language patterns. Children of parents who survived war or poverty might develop strong connections to acts of service or gifts because those expressions of love were available when emotional availability wasn't. Sometimes, love languages skip generations. A grandparent's unexpressed love language can emerge in a grandchild, as if the family system is trying to heal old wounds through new patterns of connection. Understanding your love language origins requires honest reflection on your childhood experiences. Ask yourself, how did your caregivers express love? What expressions of care felt most meaningful to you as a child? What did you long for but rarely receive? Notice your emotional reactions to different love expressions. Do certain gestures trigger disproportionate gratitude or disappointment? These intense reactions often point to childhood wounds or fulfillments around specific love languages. Pay attention to how you instinctively show love to others. We often give love the way we wish to receive it as children. Your natural way of caring for others reveals your deepest love language needs. Recognizing childhood origins of your love language is the first step toward healing and growth. Understanding why you need certain expressions of love can reduce shame and increase self-compassion. Your needs aren't excessive or needy, they're normal. Responses to your early experiences. Healing involves both honoring your primary love language and gradually expanding your capacity to give and receive love in other ways. This doesn't mean changing your core needs, but developing flexibility in how love flows between you and others. Sometimes healing requires grieving what you didn't receive in childhood before you can fully embrace what's available now. A child who never heard, "I love you," might need to mourn that absence before they can truly receive affirming words as an adult. Understanding the childhood roots of love languages transforms relationships. Instead of taking your partner's love language preferences personally, you can see them as responses to their early experiences. This creates compassion, rather than frustration. Conflicts about love expression often stem from different childhood templates. One partner might show love through acts of service because that's how their family operated, while the other needs words of affirmation because that's what felt like love in their childhood. The goal isn't to change each other's love languages, but to understand their origins and learn to speak each other's emotional language with intention and care. Awareness of love language. Origins allows you to make conscious choices about how you express love to the next generation. You can honor your children's emerging love language preferences rather than defaulting to your own patterns. This might mean learning to give affirmation if you rarely received it, or offering physical comfort if touch was scarce in your childhood. Breaking these patterns requires conscious effort because you're working against deeply ingrained neural pathways. Sometimes, the healing comes through giving to your children what you wished you had received. Your inner child can experience healing through watching your actual children receive the love you always needed. True emotional maturity involves integrating all love languages while honoring your primary needs. This means developing the capacity to both give and receive love in multiple ways, even if some feel more natural than others. Start by practicing the love language that feels most foreign to you. If you struggle with physical touch, begin with small gestures. If words of affirmation feel uncomfortable, practice offering specific, genuine compliments. Remember that expanding your love language repertoire doesn't diminish your primary needs. You can learn to appreciate acts of service while still needing quality time. Growth involves addition, not replacement.